I've always written. I used to write angsty poems when I was a teenager, really bad, really bad, and just, typical kind of 16-year-old stuff. And then throughout sort of my kind of working life, I've been writing, but it's been more writing scripts, because as Chris mentioned, I'm also an actor, writing stories, writing a bit of journalism, writing blogs, whatever. And then during my master's at drama school, I was doing this big writing project, and I was like, this should be perfect. That's what I do. I write. I love writing, and everything I was doing, my teachers were just saying, yeah, no, but we're not seeing you yet. We're not seeing you. And I was going insane because I was like, I'm here. Hello. What do you want me to do? And it wasn't until I started writing poems that things started making a bit more sense to me, and making sense to my teachers. Now, when I write poems, it is near word vomit on the plane. On the plane? Vomit on the plane, vomit on the page. Near word vomit on the page. Whenever I feel a bit overwhelmed by things, and that can be really excited and really happy, or really upset, or really stressed, or really jealous, or whatever, I go to my diary, and sometimes they'll come out as a few sentences, and sometimes it will be a 2-page massive poem, but something happens. So for part of my dissertation, I decided to think, okay, well, so what's going on here? What is this process? Now, I'm really interested in psychology, and particularly Carl Jung's psychology. It's something that's always fascinated me. And I started to look at some of his theories and thought, okay, well, if I'm getting something from these poems, if I'm able to process my emotions through writing poetry, is there some link here to, psychological theory? Now, Carl Jung, this is quite sort of basically explained, but one of his big kind of theories is something called individuation, which some of you might be familiar with, some of you might not be familiar with. And it's something that everybody goes through. Now, in order to individuate, which is basically developing healthily, you have to combine the individual unconscious with the collective unconscious, right? So that's having your own innate kind of your true deep desires that are about you, and also being able to fit in with a society. So he suggests that when you're a teenager, you start to develop your collective unconscious. And I think that's kind of true, because I know that when I was a teenager, a lot of it was learning about other people's opinions and kind of regurgitating them. And I choose the ones I like. It's not that, but it was definitely, I was finding which society, which group I wanted to fit in, and kind of adopting myself to that. Now, when you become an adult, and this can go on throughout your entire adult life, and for some people it doesn't happen super successfully, you start to amalgamate your individual beliefs, your true independent beliefs, with the collective. Now, if you are unable to do that, so if you're overwhelmed by the collective unconscious, you, as Carl Jung would believe, that you develop different forms of psychoses. So that can be schizophrenia or any other sort of mental illness difficulties that are about psychosis. If you are able to form an individual unconscious, but you're unable to connect to the collective, then, so you just have your own individual sort of personal beliefs, then you're overwhelmed by neuroses. Okay, so things like OCDs and anxiety and depression, they all sort of fall under the neuroses category. Now, I found this really interesting in terms of my work, because now some of my pieces are completely individual unconscious. They are complete streams of consciousness. And actually, it's quite interesting because I write them when I'm not in a very good place, and when I'm kind of stuck on something and stuck in my head. So I'll actually read you a poem which I believe is kind of linked to the individual, unconscious. And do you know what? I was looking at these last night because I was like, oh, make sure I've got the right poems to hand. And it's quite uncomfortable reading them, and they feel neurotic, to be honest. Okay, so this is Coping Mechanisms. This is my book, by the way. It's called Getting Over Myself and Other People. It's got lots of fingerprints on, because I shouldn't show you that because I tend to read it while eating, but that's not really relevant. So, coping mechanisms from Getting Over Myself. Apparently I'm healing, so I'm trying to feel my feelings, but they leave me bloody reeling. So I'm on the floor, I'm kneeling. Is there some other way of dealing? I tried hiding and concealing and just letting go, freewheeling, but it sent me through the ceiling. So I'm trying to be more grounded, but this pain has got me keeling over. It's not looking too appealing now, but apparently I'm healing now, so I'll keep trying to feel my feelings now. Now, I hate that poem. I hate it. Thank you. Thank you, Nicholas. Yeah, I hate it. It feels really uncomfortable reading it. It feels quite, I don't know. Sometimes I look back at my work and sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I'm getting much from that. Sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, what was I doing? But for me, it's really important that it exists in here because it was a part of my process. And I'll talk about that in a bit. I'm just trying to explain all the young stuff first. Yeah. So then we have amalgamating with the collective. Okay, so other poems I have written, they're not just singular thoughts. They're taken from conversations that I've had with people, maybe a sentence that somebody said, or maybe a post that I saw, or maybe it's something that another writer wrote. And I like to kind of collage other people's words with my own. And then sometimes I get something more out of it and it starts to change. Now, this is a sort of very kind of basic explanation of applying Jung's theories to my own. But it's, if you and I wish I could sort of explain all of them, but I think I'd be going on for hours. If I started basically applying all these different theories to my writing process and starting to kind of get something out of it. Now, so I did this a couple of years ago at drama school, and then I finished that. This was before the book was written. I had all of these poems, but it was more of a kind of like just an exploratory thing for me. I put them to the side. I kept on writing poems because I enjoy it, but so I put them to the side and got on with life. And then I graduated from drama school, and I was like, okay, cool. I need to get some jobs now. I need to get cast in some cool things. So I kept doing my poems just because, as I said, it's a great thing to do when I was feeling overwhelmed. And I did the rounds of auditions. So then this summer, I got cast in, summer just gone, got cast in a really big tour. I got both the leads in a play. Like, how on earth does that happen? It's my first big break in the acting industry. And then, ta-da! Theatre industry was like, which was, it was really hard. Everything that I've worked towards, I gave up a career to do this. I put all my savings into going to drama school, and then I finally got my big opportunity after a lifetime of work, and I went down the drain. And then suddenly, because I was supposed to be on tour, I was sort of in between places to live, so staying at my parents', thinking that I'd be on the road for 4 months. So then suddenly I'm at home with my parents at the age of 27. Wasn't the plan. I had lost my job, and I thought I'd lost my whole industry. And then I basically started having seizures, completely out of the blue. Started having stress-induced seizures. Now, this was really shocking for me because I am pretty positive person, aggressively positive, I think some might say. And usually when I go through something, when, as an actor, we get a lot of rejection, we do all of this. And I'm like, right, cool, next project, it's all right, I've got it, no problem, I'm out, I'm going to do this, I'm going to write a play, I'm going to da-da-da. And I was forced to sit with myself. And it was horrible. And my body was like, nope, can't do it, can't do it. So then and I lost my driving license, which was, even then I was like, great, so I'm staying with my parents, I don't have any independence, this is really, really, really hard. But what it did is it forced me, literally forced me to think, okay, you need to start doing something about this. You need to start actually not going and distracting yourself, not going and finding a new job or a new boyfriend or cutting your hair off or something. You need to actually deal with what's going on inside your mind. So I started actually collating all of my poems together and having a look at them. Yeah, and it was, I mean, I did a lot of other things as well. I did a lot of meditation. I did a lot of, studying more Carl Jung. I, various things where I was actually sort of forced to sit with myself. And then that's how the anthology came about, getting over myself and other people. So it's split into 4 chapters. First of all, and they're all hormonal responses to different emotions. So the first one is, I should know this really quickly, dopamine. Now, dopamine is the hormone that's released when you experience thrill or pleasure. So, yeah, I mean, you can take what you want from that. The second chapter is oxytocin, which is the hormone release when you're in love. Now, this for me isn't just sort of romantic relationships, but also the love I feel with friends and family, or even something that I'm doing or whatever. Then cortisol. Now, cortisol is the hormone that's released when you experience stress. I'm afraid to say it, cortisol is the longest chapter in my book, because I didn't cut out any of the horrible poems like the one I just read to you. I'm going to read another one from the cortisol chapter. This was post-seizure, sort of trying to kind of acknowledge things a bit more within myself. Still struggling a little bit, but trying. So here we go again. Oops. Just like the last time when my eye got lodged the wrong way round, stuck on the thoughts of yesterday, blind to sight and deaf to sound of anything ahead. I'm stuck behind. I'm living in the last few months of my mind. But I've done it before, and I'll do it again. Heave my eyeball out its socket and then honour the pain, wallow a while, watch the blood congeal on the floor, wipe the face, gulp down the bile. Now shove it back so it's facing the front and look forward now. Go take what you want. So yeah, this is basically, that was my long introduction to the word radical. I think I've always considered myself an activist. I think most people who know me would probably, if they're describing me in 5 words, I think feminist would probably, come up. I'm quite an active feminist. I'm involved in, I don't know, I've done marches, I've done speeches in schools, written plays or whatever. But I have never felt more radical as I have felt in this year, when I have been sat and dealing with my own darkness. Now, Carl Jung, once again, the love of my life, he has another theory called the shadow, and that in order to develop properly and healthily, we have to acknowledge the shadow within ourselves. Everybody has one. There's no such thing as someone who is wholly light. And if you are unable to acknowledge your shadow, then you'll be overwhelmed by it. So he believes that, people who commit violent crimes or, do these sort of atrocious things, that doesn't come from having more evil in us than other people do. It's just being unable to say, right, I have these feelings, I have these thoughts, let's get curious about it, let's acknowledge it, let's discuss it. So that's something that this year I've been trying to do. And instead of seeing myself as the wonderful activist, vegan, feminist that I wish I could be, actually saying, okay, what do I do? What do I do that doesn't help? Yeah, okay, I'm going to read you another poem, if that's okay. And this is really funny because when I wrote this poem, their friends from me, Emma, that's really bad. I was like, but it's true. And anyway, sorry, I'll read it. It's called 20 something. All my plants are dead, and I didn't like them anyway. I'm too deep into this chasm of a week, though I think it's only Wednesday. I drink water all the time, but usually with coffee in. I pretend to be ambitious, but I'd rather win the lottery. I did want to be a feminist, but I wish I hadn't bothered now. I'd like to be on page 3, watching all these men stop dead and bow, while I just giggle mindlessly. How grand this kind of life can be, and I'll two-step through the system in a colourful monotony. Yeah, and so my parents were like, Emma, what, you want to be on page 3? That's so bad. No, it's so misogynistic. But actually, I think it's really important to say, yeah, like, God, that would, I mean, there is a part of me that, wouldn't that be a lush life? Wouldn't that be great? Now, when I was a teacher, I used to be a teacher, when I was working with teenage girls, I was really, in my mind, it was really important that we don't discuss boyfriends, or we don't discuss, I don't know, that we really try and, I want these girls to, you know, realize that their worth is more than, you know, objectification and all of these things. And if they ever try to express something in that way, I'd be like, no, we do not do that. Come on, we're feminists, we're blah, blah, blah. But all that does, as we were speaking about in our break-off group earlier, when you say to people, no, when you say, you must think this, you must do this, it just gets their back up, really. And if I, as an adult, am unable to acknowledge the parts of me which are drawn to things that I don't like about society, then I'm never going to change those parts of society. If I'm unable to see why it would feel really good to be a model on page 3, if I'm going to say, okay, so what is it about that that I enjoy? What is it about that that I don't know, what is it about that lifestyle which we're drawn to, or what has caused me maybe to be drawn to that lifestyle, and what are the other effects of it? If we don't have those conversations, and if I just said, no, of course not, I want to be, you know, I'm a serious journalist, I want to do this, and just pretended that I didn't have those needs, then I'd never be able to connect with the other people. I'm kind of getting myself a bit wrapped up, but hopefully you guys understand what I mean a little bit. Okay, I've got another poem about being an imperfect activist. It's called Spag Bowl Shame. This one speaks to my heart. Do I miss being young? I miss spaghetti bolognese. Today, it's only served with this thick gilt glaze of sad cows, ozone layers, diameter of my thighs. I can't stop them all. I have to choose my prize. And I pretend to be good and I want to be kind. But if I'm going to be honest about what's really on my mind, I'm simply far more concerned with the matters of my heart than every bloody one of my farmyard counterparts, and how the universe is dying. And yes, I'm probably not trying to do all the things I really should be. And so I'll skip the carbohydrates and your minced flesh, thanks. I'll focus on getting into my new dress, thanks. And you might call this vanity, but I'm going to claim insanity when all I want is spaghetti bolognese. Yes, thanks. So, yeah, now, at the time I was writing that, I was, if you were to look on my social media, you would see a really woke, for want of a better word, non-meat eating, I don't know, what's the word? Always fighting for social justice, and you know, trying to focus on the bigger issues. And the problem is when we give out that message, and when we pretend that that is all we are, other people who might be, and I'm generally thinking of younger people because my experience has been in schools, So I think a lot about the kind of the message we give out to teenagers, but it's not necessarily, it's everybody. If we're constantly giving out that you have to be, you can't eat meat, you can't, you can never eat meat, you can never do this, you must not even, you must be able to think more about the cows than about what you're, drawn to, and it's shocking that you even want to do that because that's so awful, whereas I'm a good person because I do all of this, then all it's going to do is make people think, well, I do want that, I do, so that means I can't. I think it's really important that we start acknowledging ourselves as imperfect activists, because I think what is going to happen is it will mean more people can be, more people who perhaps don't have. I sometimes feel if I, you know, do whatever, if I engage in something which is maybe not as feminist, maybe if I watch a TV show like Pretty Little Liars, it's one of the most misogynistic things I've ever seen, but I love it. um, and if I watch that, does that mean that I am now a bad person? Does that mean that I should give up everything in terms of sort of social justice? So back to Carl Jung, a wonderful guy. He has another theory that we have two identities. We have the persona, which is the person that we create, the person that we want people to see when they look at us. And we have the self, and that's who we sort of truly are. And some people are unable to ever fully acknowledge the self, and it remains as an unconscious part of us, and a lot of us attach ourselves to the persona and never realize what we truly want and who we truly are. So I try, through writing poetry, through reading other people's poetry, and through taking a second to actually deal with my own darkness and process it, hopefully try and attach a little bit more to the self. And yes, hopefully when you're reading the poetry as well, because it's kind of, the aim is, because it's linked to Jungian theory, that when you read it, hopefully readers have an opportunity as well to do something similar, to attach to the self.